Hello and welcome to the Consistency Project with E.C. Sinkowski. My name is Patrick Cummings, and every week here on the show, I have the distinct privilege of having a discussion with E.C. on subject matters that range from fitness to nutrition to the choices we can all make to live a healthier, more functional life. By exploring both the principles at play and the actions worth carrying out as a result, it's our goal to get you thinking, get you moving, and get you taking more consistent steps toward optimizing your well-being. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the show. I'm here with a quick introduction all by myself this week because we have a conversation that EC had recently with old friend Pat Sherwood. For those folks who have been around the CrossFit community for a while, you will certainly recognize Pat Sherwood. I know I met him back in 2006, 2007 when he was the flow master at the CrossFit Level 1 seminars, and I always enjoyed listening to him and learning from him, and I think you will do the same this week. Pat Sherwood is the creator of CrossFit Linchpin. He's the co-host of the Varied Not Random podcast alongside Adrian Bosman. And he joins us this week to talk to EC about the optimal level of fitness that we need to live a happy, healthy, productive life. They talk about programming. They talk about the kinds of movements that we want to make sure we see every week in our training, and about why both EC and Pat cringe a little bit when they hear the term classic CrossFit. Just a reminder before we get into the conversation, if you are not yet subscribed or following us wherever you are listening or watching, please do. It helps EC and I ensure that we can continue to make this show, which we would really prefer to do. So thank you in advance. Without further ado, here is EC with Pat Sherwood.
Okay. Sorry, I just
75.
had an apple. It had some fruit. You know, fruit will kill you. Choking on that fruit. Should have had some bread.
Are we going to get through this or not? Pat, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
We're talking about the level of fitness needed for a high quality of life.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I thought you would be someone to pick your brain about your thoughts on that. Some of these questions you've probably gotten before. Certainly are popular ones for me. And so I'd love your insight into them, especially with all of your experience with CrossFit and CrossFit Linchpin.
Yeah, well, I guess if the question is level of fitness or how much fitness is needed to be a happy, capable human being on planet Earth.
Yes.
I don't think it's that much, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I really don't. I don't know.
I know.
Sometimes the level of training that people do, you would think that what they did outside of the gym was that they certainly didn't work in an office and drive an automobile, that they harvest their own food, they all day long, they chop their own wood, they're a member of Delta Force, they do Spartan races on the side, they're constantly training for the games, they're a power lifter and an Olympic lifter. And I'm like, I don't know what everyone's training for, but they're living a wildly different life than every human being that I know.
Their rest days are Spartan races.
Oh my goodness. I mean, people are going hard to the paint in the gym. So I think the actual level of fitness needed to be capable, to be competent in the world that we live in 2023, and maybe that's a wonderful sign that the world has advanced incredibly, is a lot lower than what people are pursuing. And that's good. I mean, you want to have some reserve, right? You don't want to be doing just the bare minimum. So I think it's far less than most. If you are a low-level CrossFitter, unremarkable in every metric, you are Conan the Barbarian compared to a regular human being and compared to what you will need in daily life for physical capacity. Totally. That's probably the easiest way that I can say it.
One of your colleagues, one Mr. Adrian Bosman.
Oh, yes, a man of ill repute.
So he always described CrossFit, especially when I was there. I love that he's like, it's a subculture of a subculture, which I just loved. It's like fitness isn't even what most people are doing on a general day in and day out basis. You preach consistency, you know the deal. Most people aren't doing that. And then within that, you have this group of CrossFitters who are like seeking elite fitness. And so I love your point, like, an average, below average CrossFitter is head and shoulders above so many just people walking around. And that isn't to be a judgment call. That just the level of fitness is so exponential. Okay. So one of the questions that I get all the time, you must be asked, I mean, you're the programmer, but people are kind of always seeking kind of for the optimal mix in their programming, especially to get after this general health. Now, I think sometimes there's been a misinterpretation of what CrossFit programming is with the variance in it and what that looks like. And that could probably be an entire podcast. But for the sake of this discussion, like if you were to kind of say, hey, what would a program look like in terms of strength days, high intensity, short metcons, and then maybe longer, lower intensity, more cardio pieces? Like what is kind of an optimal split in your mind for people who are pursuing this, high quality of life?
Well, I know you said we only have a couple hours here today on the show. Yeah. I think you framed the question well because it could have gone off the rails initially.
Right.
When you're asking what's the ideal split, how much of whatever do you need? It's very important to ask, what's your goal? What are you doing? Is your goal general physical preparedness, long-term health, and just being a wonderfully capable human being that ideally is fit for any normal task that life's going to throw your way? And that's from your car being in a ditch, building a fence in your backyard, chopping up a tree, like manual labor. That's not trying to go to the CrossFit Games. That's not a normal human endeavor. That's an artificial, man-made creation that is intentionally designed to exceed what a regular human being would ever face. Mm-hmm. So you're by its very definition, you're not training for the real world if you're training for competition. So
correct.
If you're actually, doing what you need to do for the real world, and your focus is not being a powerlifter, not being Olympic, but general GPP, you're greedy, right? I want to have an engine. I want to be able to move my body, and I want to be able to move external objects. I kind of want it all. Mm-hmm. Then it's that old, that old thing that I used to say all the time, I think fits really well, which is, live your life in couplets and triplets, go heavy at least once a week, every now and then go long. And that is an oversimplification for what could be a 40-minute discussion that we would have. But I would say if you're in the gym, I'd love to have you in the gym 5 times a week. That'd be great. If that's not where you are in life and you can only get into the gym 3 times a week, guess what? You can go a long way with 3 times a week. But if you're asking for my ideal, I'd love to have you in there 5. I'd love to get a couple rest days mixed in there because believe it or not, you shouldn't just, unnecessarily flog yourself 7 days a week and think that's going to go well.
Right.
You actually need to let the system rest so that you get the benefit and the adaptation. Out of those 5 days in the gym, I would love to see one of those be a dedicated classic heavy day of lifting where you're not trying to jam more on the plate than that. Like if you're going to do a 5x5 back squat with a general warm-up, then building up your warm-up weights until you get to what's going to be your working sets for that day, doing your working sets, taking 3 to 4 minutes rest between each one of those working sets, and then cooling down and going home is going to take you 60 minutes to actually do a real heavy day. So you're not going to shoehorn it into 12 to 15 minutes before you do a 24-minute chipper, or you are, and then you're going to wonder why you're not getting strong. So I'd love to see one of those classic dedicated heavy days, and the other 4 days, one of them I'd love to see no external loading in it whatsoever. Imagine that. It's just a body weight bonanza. It's just a run. It's just a sprint. It's just a row, but there's no external loading at all. And then those other 3 days would be kind of your classic mixed modality days, but couplets, triplets, chippers, of whatever different modal domains could be in there. Those would be intelligently laid out to make sure you cover your bases as the weeks go by, from short to medium to long time domains. Make sure you cover all the global ways that the human body moves, from going below parallel to pulling off the ground to pressing in various directions. Like make sure you're covering all that, and same deal with the loadings. And so that's what I would like to see. And if that got reduced down to only 3 days in the gym, I'd make one of those a heavy day, and the other 2 would most likely be mixed modality.
Yeah. If you were to paint with a broad brush, you don't do this, but if you were to paint with a broad brush,
hypothetically speaking,
let's just say you were willing to do that. Would you say any of those elements, the heavy, the long, or the kind of mixed modality, are skipped more than others you see Like most people are kind of like, not today. I'm going to do X instead. What are they skipping more often than not?
Oh my goodness. It's funny. I think it changed over the course of the years.
Okay.
For those that have been in, I can only speak for the CrossFit community. Maybe this is
Sure.
wildly different of, maybe I'm sure other communities have their cycles of things that are very popular, then they lose it, whatever it is. But do you remember like back in the day, how fun it is to use that term, you used to have a tough time getting people to show up for heavy days
Mm-hmm.
because they actually found it boring. People liked getting a sweat. They feel like they did something. They like to lay on the ground, like hyperventilating. Oh man, that was so tough. And they dreaded the heavy days. And I think that was too much skewed to one direction. That wasn't respecting the heavy days and how absolutely mission critical and beneficial they are to your overall strength and conditioning development.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think we've gone the other way to your performance on heavy days is the number one indicator of which the world must revolve around, and everything else is subservient to that. I think we've gone too far the other way. I mean, now you'd have to hold a person's children for ransom to get them to do a 5 or 10K run. I mean, you'd have to just, I don't even know what you could do.
Right.
I ask people, what's your 1 rep max deadlift, back squat, snatch, clean? They will rattle that off. What's your 10K time? They're like, my 10K time? What? Are you crazy? Are you trying to get me to lose all my gains? I'm not going to go for a 10K run. And so I think we've swung too far the other way, quite frankly. It's the good old classic track days, running, engine building. I don't think that's getting the respect that it deserves these days.
Yeah, I mean, this was the tangent that I don't want to send us on, but I have a hard time not going on it.
Do it. It's your show. You can do whatever you want.
That's right. Here we go. Off on the tangent. I feel like oftentimes CrossFit programming, and I even say it sometimes this way only because I know that's how it's interpreted when you're just trying to get a concept across. I think sometimes CrossFit programming is interpreted as it's only Fran, it's only Christine, it's only the couplets and the triplets. It's only the 10, 20 minute, breathing really hard and fast stuff. And that CrossFit isn't the heavy day, and CrossFit isn't run the 10K. That's the cardio days and that's the strength days. And so I think sometimes that gets missed in there. But that's interesting that you think it's been switched the other way. Do you feel like you notice that within your own community?
No, I think I've been very fortunate. I think the good things that have happened within Linchpin, I don't think I can take credit for. I think I've just been very fortunate. And when I started Linchpin, I had no plan. I didn't intend on building what it has evolved into. And I think that actually was one of my saving graces because I never could have pulled it off if it was like an intentional plan. When I started programming, I just did it out of love of programming, out of a pursuit of the truth, and that's it. I didn't care what people wanted to do. I didn't care what people's feelings were. I didn't care. Like I was going to say, hey, I'm going to put out something every day that if an emotionless cyborg robot programmed what you should do, not necessarily what you want to do, but if you actually had the discipline, you could remove your ego, you can scale when needed, and delivered you each day, hey, I know you don't want to work on this, but today's what we're doing, and you could do it, you'd be on the wonderful path. And that's what I started with Linchpin. Luckily found a merry band of wonderful, crazy people around the world that I guess got it. And so I actually have to say, it's funny, in some of our private groups with Linchpin, there'll be like the hashtag running is stupid. Like whenever I program some running thing, like it'll tongue in cheek, like, yep, we know, boss, we know you want us to do this, but we're not going to say it's stupid. We're going to do it, but we don't like it. And I love that. Like, hey, I don't enjoy this, but I'm going to do that. And so I actually even made a sticker that says running is stupid, ... but it works.
Right.
And so we've kind of developed a really cool culture of, and I think human beings know this on some sort of like in your DNA level, right? Like there's no difference in strength and conditioning. If you just allow people, or if people only do what they like to do or what they want to do, well then you crave comfort. You don't want to get out of your comfort zone. You don't want to look a little foolish or uncoordinated or finish near the back of the pack, if you told human beings, hey, you know what? We're only going to do what you want to do. They're like, great. Netflix, nothing challenging, and sugar. That's what I would love to do. And I don't want to save or invest money. I want to spend every dime that I make. That's what I want to do. It's like, well, there's a lot of benefit in doing the opposite of that, quite frankly. And a lot of the good things that come from life, I think people know intuitively, like, yeah, you're right. That probably is what I should be doing to get on a better path. And so we've kind of created that culture of, we're going to do what's right. And if you want to come along, cool. And we'll give you a billion options and the educational information to make it fit wherever you are in your fitness journey. But we're going to take the proper steps. So that's that.
I think one of my pointed questions about that, because I have seen your community and you do definitely have what you're saying, and people are very willing to put the ego aside and to try the things that they're not good at, is if I were to paint with a broad brush with some of the clients that I work with, I think the strength piece is missing, and that it's a little bit more of the classic cardio. Not always.
Interesting.
Not always. I'm sure that there are others that are swinging more to the strength side. We all have a mix of clients, right? But if you were to have people coming into Linchpin who maybe, aren't really into lifting heavy, how do you kind of help them understand what intensity is and lifting is in those more strength-focused sections, and whether or not they're really doing the 5x5 back squat correctly?
Well, it's not a simple conversation, but I actually I did an entire podcast just on what a heavy day should look like, because it took 40 minutes to lay it out and let people understand what the benefits of heavy lifting are. And if you're not doing that how you are, to some degree, leaving a whole lot of gains and capacity on the table that you just don't want. And again, whether you're a sports athlete, you're a general practitioner, you're just somebody looking to be healthy for as long as you can, being strong, undeniably, when you look at the opposite, which is being weak, I mean, that paints a very clear picture. It's like, which one would you rather have? It's like, well, I'd rather be strong. Right. Well, how are we going to do that? Yes, if you're starting at absolutely ground zero and you have no fitness background whatsoever, then doing mixed modality metcons with any external loading is going to improve your capacity. Correct. Because you're starting at zero. But all things being equal, we need to give the heavy days the respect that they would deserve, same as those other ones. And doing it properly, it takes a long time, because intensity, actually Adrian and I just did a really interesting podcast with an exercise scientist, because, you can say whatever you want, but unless you've got a degree hanging in the wall, nobody believes you. So the exercise scientist was like, yeah, the literature is very clear that intensity drives results. It's an oversimplification, but the literature is very clear.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like with the barbell. So if we're talking a heavy day, intensity in that arena is just, still load on the bar and the reps that you're doing and all that. Well, if you're always into this classic CrossFit, which is not classic CrossFit, it's right. An unsophisticated understanding of the methodology that everything's fast, everything's for time. And that's how I'm going to do my 7x1 back squat day. I'm going to rush through it as fast as I can. And taking 3 to 4 minutes between each one of those sets seems way too long. And that's so crazy that I'm going to rest 30 seconds and quote unquote make it harder. All you're doing, well, it's better than doing nothing. Let me go ahead and say that. But all you're doing by rushing back to the barbell is not allowing your body the opportunity to recover to an optimal degree to actually really lift heavy again. And so you're intentionally limiting the load on the bar and that in a particular way, crushing the intensity of that workout. And then you're not going to get the results that you should. And so some of these things, CrossFit has everything from fast and furious days, where you just set your hair on fire and you go out like a Tasmanian devil, to longer, slower cardio, long chipper sort of a days, and then days that you're lifting heavy weights or you're lifting loading as quickly as you can properly. There's an interesting piece to that as well. And then it has heavy days where you're taking all the time in the world and you're not rushing it, and you're literally doing nothing or moving slowly for 3 to 4 minutes between lifts, which if you haven't done that in a while, there's a good chance that's why you're not getting what you should out of the strength component. And I also think, not to go down a rabbit hole or a tangent, but that's another thing, to some degree, shooting a portion of the CrossFit community in the foot that has fallen into the trap of lifting heavy every day. And I think I can follow the bouncing ball as to why that happened, because whatever you do, whether you're a CrossFit athlete, you play football, you look up to your heroes, right? And whatever your heroes are, my kids are like, love basketball. They try to mimic their heroes in the front yard. Like, it's just what people do. So if your heroes are CrossFit athletes and you dive into, well, what are these people doing? They do 28 million workouts a day and they lift heavy almost all the time. Well, that's what I should do. And no, first of all, no, you should not. You're living a wildly different life than them. And you're seeing the top tier genetic freaks that also have the work ethic, the discipline, and have their lifestyle set up around to be able to do that. That's a totally different deal. So A, you shouldn't do that. But B, they've got all day to do that. Well, since you don't have all day to do that in a CrossFit class, so some people, unfortunately, are going to try to sneak everything into 1 hour instead of doing one thing really well with the appropriate amount of intensity, with virtuosity. We're going to try to snake in part A, B, C, and D today. And since we got all this stuff to do, let's get through the warm-up. Hurry up, because we're going to get to part A. And part A is hang squat cleans, 3 sets of 3. But we got, 11 minutes to do it. Go. And now go to that. Well, so now you do this rushed heavy lift that doesn't yield the results that it should, because you didn't take your time. You didn't properly warm up. You didn't slowly build to your working sets. You didn't take 3 to 4 minutes rest between that. You know that there's something else coming after that. So are you going to, if you really do a 5x5 back squat, you're ready to go home and lay on the couch.
Correct.
So if you've got to do Cindy after that, you might be holding back a little bit. So now you did a rushed, mediocre session with inadequate rest at submaximal loading in a mediocre fashion. And then you did a workout. And then guess what's happening tomorrow? The same thing. Well, now you're going to be pretty darn tired. So it might be even a bit more mediocre tomorrow, because that was a heck of a session today. Oh, and guess what the next day is? The same darn thing. Week after week, month after month, now you're just in this malaise of I'm just trying to survive. I'm not trying to crush everything. And I'm lifting heavy every day and not getting stronger. And it's, I think, an odd person that can say, hey, you know what? Because most people think if I'm not getting the results that I want, I'm not doing enough. It's a unique person that goes, you know what? I'm not getting the results that I want. I should do less. That's not the normal thing that leaps to the human brain, but in that environment, it's precisely what's needed. And so I think there's a lot of interesting things going on out there, and I think not respecting the heavy days. If you're not strong and you're not getting the strength gains that you want and you're not respecting the heavy days, I can follow that bouncing ball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that about the games athletes, because I see that with nutrition, obviously, when people see the diets, and it's hard to explain that, follow their work ethic, do not follow their diet. Same thing with the training, follow their training ethic, but don't follow exactly their workout volume.
Oh, no, I'm married to a former games athlete, and she'll say that during that period of time, that was not pursuing long-term health.
Right.
That's a different endeavor. And a lot of games athletes that are honest, Dan Bailey's a friend of all ours and a good guy, and he'll be the first to tell you that when he was knee deep in games training, that was not a healthy endeavor. It was looking to win and maximize performance during a certain period of time, and it comes at a cost. Yes,
yeah, I have a couple stories there, but not on Dan, just on games athletes. But we'll put that aside for a little bit. I love this idea though of almost trying to establish, and it's more of a theoretical one than, we don't need to carve this in stone and make this, the new workout program. But I sort of love this idea of almost minimum effective dose around training and what that could look like in terms of, hey, what are some really either benchmark workouts or benchmark movements that people should really think of as high volume, high lever, not high volume, high value, high lever movements and workouts that could really form the meat and potatoes of somebody's workouts?
I'm such a crazy lunatic obsessive workaholic is probably what my wife would call it, with like programming and stuff like that, that for me to answer that question and give you my actual list, I'd have to do like a few weeks of like in-depth research to really make sure I could stand behind it. But, you know, what I will say is, you know, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that could fit the needs of what you just said. There's not just 12 workouts or 20 or 100.
Sure.
Because getting back to what I said earlier, more important than the actual workouts is if you had the knowledge to look at the workout and say, did it cover those global needs that we mentioned earlier? Below parallel, overhead, pulling from the ground, pulling your body weight in various positions, pressing your body weight in various positions, engine work, you know, heavy days, light days, time domains. You can cover those bases in an infinite number of workouts that you could keep adding to as you create more, and those would work too. And so it's not that there are, you know, the secret handful of workouts that these are the ones. It's the general principles that get people to the finish line, and that if you're covering those general principles with a sophisticated eye in a logical fashion, and in a beautiful balance that keeps the scales how they should, doesn't tip it too far to one direction, too far to the other direction, that's what's going to do it, paired with rest, paired with nutrition, paired with removing your ego and embracing scaling or modifying it if needed. And again, I really think that most people, that I shouldn't say most, but there is just a lot of people doing too much out there. You know, I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman I'm going to do a future interview with. That was like one of the strongest men in the world. I met him at the Rogue Invitational. And he was saying that he's retired now. He's a master's strongman. But he was saying when he was in it, he was big over in Europe, that when he was at his peak, like getting after it, he only trained 4 days a week to be one of the strongest men on the face of the earth. We have CrossFit athletes lifting 5 to 6 days a week. Totally. Okay, this is a guy that back squatted 550 for 20 and on lifting 4 days a week. But I've got an accountant in the 5 p.m. class that thinks he needs to only lift 6 times a week. Like, what is happening? I actually don't understand what everyone's training for.
But
and again, it's too much volume.
But I think that's almost where I was getting to. Like, I don't want to force you into saying like every day must be a squat and a deadlift, but it's like how
you've got to squat, you've got to deadlift. I can tell you that.
Yeah, like how do you feel? Obviously, you do a lot of education with your group, but you know, when just trying to educate kind of the masses about, hey, maybe you're doing too much. What are they to look to in their programming? Like, okay, no, this is essential. Like, I should keep this versus X, Y, and Z on the list.
Yeah, you know, I think a good general guideline is just some rules of twos, right? It'd be great if a couple times a week you went below parallel. So you don't need to go below parallel much more than that. A couple times a week is great. You pulled it off the ground a couple times. If you went overhead a couple times. Now, overhead could be grace, 30 clean jerks for time, and overhead later in the week could be JT, 21-15-9 of handstand push-ups, ring dips, and push-ups, not a barbell in sight, right? Those are both pressing. Those are both overhead. One's loaded, unloaded. And the fact that one's unloaded, one is loaded, is actually a really nice pairing for that week. You know, and so playing those sort of games is a great thing for most people. I'd love to see. I don't think enough people sprint, to be quite honest with you.
I see those on Linchpin show up.
Yeah, I don't enjoy them at all. And you know this, and it gets back to that base thing that most of us know, right? I mean, if it's like I was having a conversation a long time ago, back, you know, my early CrossFit days, I used to make like a New Year's goals, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and this workouts, blah, blah, blah. Those have since fallen off. And, but I remember one time, I think my deadlift was like 475, and I really wanted, 500 just sounds so cool, right? So it's like, that's my goal this year, is a 500-pound deadlift. Won't that just be, I'll shout that from the mountaintops. And I was telling that to Spiel, and he was like, that's cool, like obviously cool, but let's say that you accomplished that goal. You went from 475 to 500. Great, really. do you think that's going to show up on any day other than a 7x1 deadlift day as being it just swung your fitness in an amazing direction? And I was like, no, probably not. He's like, that being said, if you took 20 seconds off your 800-meter run, do you think that would show up in other workouts or just on the 800-meter run day? And I was like, oh, yeah, that would actually have a lot of transference, quite frankly, to a whole bunch of other days. And again, so I think there's a lot of stuff, but you know what? It's a whole lot more fun to work that deadlift than to go to the track and try to shave 20 seconds off your 800-meter run. Right. I mean, so there's just a lot of good old classic, hard work, intensity, and making sure you're covering those global bases a couple times a week. Now, some might be more. There might be a week you go below parallel 3 times. There might be some week you only go overhead once, right? But as a general sort of a theme, if you're covering each one of them a couple of times a week with some, not random, right, but with some intentionally designed and laid out variants to make sure you are covering your bases on time domains, loadings, and rep ranges, you're going to be doing pretty well. And then the part of your question as to whether or not somebody's doing too much is, for most people, if you're doing more than one thing a day, the answer is yes, you're doing too much.
Yeah.
The second part is accessory work truly is optional. It truly is. Like, you don't have to do a single piece of accessory work for your entire time on planet Earth, and you'll be wonderfully fine and fit. If you choose to do it, great. Like, just make sure that you're ready for it, both physically and psychologically, and then be really then scale it. Maybe start with reducing the load by half and see how does it feel. And don't do it every day. Do it every other day. See how does it feel. And pay attention to little non-scientific factors, like, are you still jazzed up to walk into the gym? Are you starting to feel a little like, ugh, back to the old grind here? Like, that means something right there. Really? Are you recovering to the same degree? Does your body just feel how it normally feels? You've been working out for a while during the warm-up. Is it taking a bit longer to warm up these days and things are a bit extra creaky? You might have been into the too much, too fast sort of a category. What you said about the minimum effective dose, that is one of my guiding principles. I hate the term classic CrossFit. I hate it because it implies that there's a non-classic, but it's just a useful phrase. That is one of I'm a classic CrossFit programmer, not because I want to be labeled as that, because I don't think anything else works better. That's why I do it. And in my opinion, classic CrossFit is what you're speaking about, that minimum effective dose. It is by design a minimalist program. Like, it was not a part A, B, C, and D. Like, it can be that. That's an amazing thing about CrossFit. You can kind of mold it to be many, many different things. But as a minimalist, that's what I think is so beautiful about it. It's a minimalist program that, by selecting these compound movements that have incredible transference to other things. I worked out today for 10.5 minutes. I didn't do anything else. There's not some secret thing that I'm doing on the side. I worked out for 10.5 minutes today, and I'm done. Right. And it's amazing. Now, tomorrow might be 30. The next day might be whatever, but that was it. I didn't need an hour in the gym. And I've always thought of beautiful CrossFit in something like, if you met somebody who's a native English speaker, like all of us, and you learned that they spoke Spanish, and you're like, holy cow, like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you're fluent. That's incredible. How are you fluent? You're like, oh, well, I'm married to a native speaker. My wife's from Medellin, Colombia. It's a passion of mine. I speak Spanish 10 hours a day. Like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense as to why you're fluent in Spanish. And then if you meet somebody else in a similar situation, they start rattling off Spanish. You're like, holy cow, like, you're fluent too. That's amazing. What's your deal? And they go, yeah, I study Spanish 30 minutes a day, 4 times a week. You're like, you're kidding me. That's amazing. You developed that level of capacity from that time and effort. That's classic CrossFit. Like, you should get so much bang for your buck out of what appears to be an astonishingly small time in the gym. That's what's so confusing and beautiful about CrossFit. And that's what I hope to preserve, cherish, and spread. And by doing that, you don't unnecessarily beat yourself up because you're not trying to do part A, B, and C, and D every day. And then when you're in your 40s, your shoulders, your knees, and your back are still okay. And that's even cooler than a big back squat.
Totally. No, I mean, I've always thought that about sort of original CrossFit, classic CrossFit. It is the minimum effective dose. I think even at the minimum effective dose, I mean, you know, you're still doing classic CrossFit, you know, your fitness capacity is, you know, what's the word used? You're barbarian compared to people just walking down the streets relative to your physical prowess. So
amazing. You can use the word amazing.
Amazing? Amazing. Is that better?
I'm wonderfully unremarkable in my community. I'll tell you that much.
But I do find that there's an interesting balance a little bit. I think it can be wildly productive to have goals in the gym, because that's what keeps you interested, right? That's what keeps you like wanting to come back and see the improvement and all that stuff. Yet you don't need any more pounds on your deadlift or your back squat for your quality of life.
Right.
So, you know, how do you manage that in the sense of, hey, I'm still going to come in and work hard, and yet I don't really need any of this?
Yeah.
Really?
You know, I think life, well, it gets back to our question as to, why are you even doing this? What are you training for? You know, why even walk into the gym? Why attempt to eat healthy instead of having a king-size Kit Kat bar, you know? I mean, that cookie crunch, I don't know when the last time you've had one of those things, but it's a heck of a product. You know, why are you making all these decisions? Why are you trying to get adequate sleep? You know, why are you not just eating like a drunken pirate every day? You know, like, why are you prioritizing these things in your life? And for me, you know, I've been doing CrossFit now a while. You know, it's been a bit. It started in 2005, so whatever that is, 17, 18 years now. And, you know, when I first started, you know, single guy just working out with my friends, leaderboard reigned supreme, beating each other in the workouts reigned supreme, you know, talking a little junk. I mean, that was fun. It was a blast, you know, quite frankly. You know, different phase of life now. I'm 47, I got 3 kids, and, you know, my priorities have shifted as to what's important to me. My Fran time and my back squat, this is gonna sound terrible, so maybe I'll give it some context. My Fran time and my back squat are not important to me.
Right.
What is important to me is that I'm squatting.
Right.
That's what's important. The number on the bar is not important. The fact that I'm still doing thrusters and pull-ups in whatever scale or modification allows me to appropriately challenge myself, that's important. The fact that I may never touch my lifetime PR in Fran ever again, maybe I just consider myself lucky. I could not care less.
Right.
It doesn't bother me. I don't have any feelings of why, like, because I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that is because, as you know, the father figure of my kids and all this, you know, I've got to be around and capable and strong and resilient and healthy for a long time to come. And I understand, you know, Greg Glassman was right about a whole lot of stuff. And one of the things he used to say that I really enjoyed was, you know, life doesn't care what your personal feelings on squatting and deadlifting are. You will be forced to pick things up off the ground if you live on planet Earth, and you'll be forced to pass below parallel, be it loaded or unloaded. Mm-hmm. There it is. Mm-hmm. And so life has certain challenges that don't care about your feelings. So compound functional movements are going to be your best bet for those unavoidable tasks in life. So are you going to avoid those and live your life in a machine that doesn't replicate it, or are you going to actually do the movement pattern, learn the proper technique, and then strengthen the musculature required to execute it safely? It's the easiest decision I've ever had to make in my entire life. And then you pair that with the fundamental scientific understanding that appropriate levels of intensity drive results, and what other choice do I have? Quite frankly, this is what I'm going to do because it works. And it doesn't matter if I like what tomorrow's workout is. I like being healthy and prepared for my family. That's what I like. I don't have to like the session in the gym. I've come to the point in my life where I understand discipline, I understand delayed gratification, and I understand that the payoff is worth it, and that there's a lot of things in life that involve suffering in the moment, or discomfort in the moment, or delaying pleasure in the moment, because the payoff is worth it. And what I do with regards to strength and conditioning falls under that umbrella to some degree. And motivation is fleeting. I have days of motivation and days that I don't have motivation. But if you have the discipline to understand why it is that you're walking a certain path, then it doesn't matter whether or not the motivation's that day. Like you know why you're there. And so I've been lucky enough just to kind of know why it is that I've prioritized health and fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of similarities with nutrition and training, that's for sure.
Oh, without it. I mean, I was born with a sweet tooth. I don't want to eat healthy, EC. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. And people lie to you all the time. I eat healthy for a while. You'll the stuff won't even taste good anymore. What a bunch of liars.
I know, like I lost my sweet tooth. Oh, you really?
You lost your sweet tooth. Have you had a Dairy Queen Blizzard? I mean, they're amazing. But I know what will happen if I give in to every selfish whim that crosses my path. That's not a good look, and that's not what I want. So, I'm certainly not perfect. I'm not perfect in the gym. I'm not perfect out of the gym. I take my dings, I take my lumps, I have my ups, I have my downs, but in a general sense, the trajectory is in the right direction. And that's, progress, not perfection, right?
Thank you to Pat for the conversation. If this was intriguing to you and you want to learn more about Pat's philosophy on programming, if you actually want to partake in that programming, just look for CrossFit Linchpin. You can join whether you're an individual or maybe you run a gym and you would like to use his programming. He offers both tracks. And also check out the Varied Not Random podcast alongside Adrian Bosman. They get into these kinds of topics on every single episode. Thank you to you for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. Thank you for sharing the show with your friends, your cousins, your colleagues. It always makes EC and I happy. Speaking of which, she and I will be back next week for another episode of the Consistency Project.